Today on the Metal Roofing channel, we are talking about one of the biggest challenges of contractors, and specifically roofing contractors, and that is labor. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Metal Roofing channel and welcome to Q&A Mondays. It's a great day here on the channel. Subscribe here if you're new. We release new architectural metal content every Monday and Wednesday. I'd love to have you join the conversation. Today we have Todd Miller from Isaiah Industries. Todd, thanks so much for being back here today.
Sure, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Adam Mazzella back on the channel as well. All the questions we're going to be talking about today are in the description, so check that out as well. Today we're talking about a challenge that contractors face, and specifically roofing contractors, and that's labor. How to find good labor, what type of person should they be looking for, and kind of what does the market look like?
Good question. I mean, certainly one of the things that we often talk to folks about, and one of the things that we see some of the very successful contractors out there doing is personality testing. And so they want to make sure that they understand who it is that they're hiring and how that person behaves, how that person's going to respond, how they need to relate to that person. They're looking for someone ultimately who is going to take pride in what they're doing, someone who's going to be detail-oriented, someone who is going to enjoy being given a task and then following it and learning it and perfecting it. And so a lot of guys are using personality profile tests to help them find that individual. And even if you already have a crew and you're saying, gosh, I've got a crew and I didn't personality profile them, it's never too late because you can still go back and learn a lot by running some simple disc profiles or something like that in order to understand how do I better relate to this person? How do I better challenge this person? How do I help them improve and grow and so forth? I think that sometimes we'll often think, okay, I'm looking for someone to work on a roof, so I'm going to look for someone who's already on a roof. Well, those folks are harder to find, and not necessarily do you want to just go out, trying to scalp your competitors' employees. And oftentimes, if you find someone who has that kind of history and work experience, but they're not currently working, that's probably a red flag because most of the good guys are working someplace right now. So you got to go out and find a deeper well, find new folks. And again, I think personality profiling can be a real key way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And even from the employee's perspective, knowing their personality type would help them make certain decisions and know their motivations for doing things as well.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about commercial versus residential for a minute. There's going to be some inherent differences in the type of labor that does both types of work. Talk to me about that.
So a lot of the contractors who are selling residential metal roofing tend to be smaller guys. They're not the real big firms that employ hundreds or thousands and have good benefits and 401k programs and all those types of things to recruit workers. So a lot of times these are much smaller operations. And so they can have a considerable challenge, even more so than the bigger guys do. They also typically may not pay the same wages that some of the big guys do. But they offer a lot of benefits in terms of work atmosphere and environment and pride, taking pride in what they're doing that sometimes the guys can't get from the bigger companies. So I think that the smaller guys do have some extra challenges. I think that's why they need to have a plan to be able to go out and recruit and continually be recruiting. But I would advise everyone above all, don't ignore the guys that you got. And when I say guys, I'm including ladies in there as well, because we're seeing more and more women in the workforce as well in construction sites. But don't ignore the folks that you have. You want to make sure that you're going to keep them because it's much more expensive to have to replace them than to retain them.
Commercial and residential, I think the important thing is that guys are motivated and have work and have the opportunity to build a skill set. Whether it's a commercial roofing contractor or a residential roofing contractor, a lot of these guys that we've seen come up through the industry started as a general laborer, learned how to do something and then started doing it well. And then they kind of keep building up. They went from being on the crew to running a crew to being the foreman of several crews. whether commercial or residential. And really what we've seen is guys that do well as roofing contractors and ultimately owning a contracting company, they didn't just show up and say, hey, I'm a businessman. More often than not, they showed up, learned how to do everything top to bottom, and got really good at certain things in that industry, and ultimately grew into a businessman from there.
It very much is an industry where people can have that kind of growth, and that's one of the things I think is really exciting for new workers looking at getting involved in construction, is the sky really is the limit. You know, they will oftentimes start on the roof and in some sort of a journeyman or apprentice program where they're learning.
Yeah.
And, you know, eventually if they pick up some skills of leadership and business management and things along the way, they can, you know, at some point become a very successful contractor as well, owning their own business. And we see a lot of that, especially, I would say, in the residential arena and the home remodeling arena, where folks have made that kind of progression. So, yeah, it's exciting when you get a hold of someone that's young and ambitious, wants to do some exciting things, learn it from the bottom, and just grow with that is a great way to go.
Yeah, there's a lot of upward mobility really in this industry. And, you know, even if you didn't want to say, I want my own big roofing company, I know a lot of guys that strictly run a crew or two and just focus on metal, and then they work with other roofing contractors and they get subbed out for their metal work or their shingle work or whatever it might be.
That is a tremendous opportunity. I agree. For anyone who would be interested in running a sub crew or a couple crews or 3 crews, they'll find work out there.
Oh, yeah.
They really were. I've been surprised. So we had started this Facebook group a while back called Metal Roof Installers. And we're up to like 2,000 on there now. And these largely are guys who are subcontract installers. Now, we got a mixture of some other folks on there as well. But it's folks who are, you know, making themselves available to professionally install metal roofs in a high quality manner. And it's great to see that kind of not only exposure, but just growth and enthusiasm about their trade.
So if you're interested in joining the Facebook group, we have a link in the description below. Go check that out as well. Let's jump over to one of the main topics of the video today, how to find labor. If you are looking for a crew or you're looking for someone to add to your crew and maybe expand your business, how would you go about finding that person?
We talked a little bit about how oftentimes people get in and they work their way up. But I would consider this, that person who is not yet in the industry, maybe making sandwiches at Subway. They may be working a landscape crew. They may be working a road crew. You know, a few years ago, and I still have some, we had produced these postcards that you could go out and our dealers or contractors could go out and give to anyone that they saw who they thought might be interested in this type of work. And you're really looking for someone who takes pride in what they do, likes working with their hands, isn't afraid to be on a roof. That's important. And, you know, likes working outside. And there are folks who like those things. One of the things I think that's happened is, you know, my generation, which I'm the oldest one in the room, but, you know, my generation, we grew up outside. We grew up doing projects around the house with our fathers. We grew up, you know, playing baseball and stuff outside and all those types of things. Younger generation hasn't necessarily grown up that way, and it's not a bad thing. It's just the world and the culture we live in. And so sometimes we have to open their minds a little bit to what opportunities are out there because they don't know about them. And so doing things like these postcards and just handing out your business card, always having your elevator speech. So you see someone, you know, you see the guy making sandwiches at Subway and maybe grumbling about his not getting enough hours this week or something. That's an opportunity. Mm-hmm. Hey, here's an opportunity for you. Let's talk. And so I think it has to some degree be very grassroots. That said, lots of good trade schools out there, vocational schools. Those can certainly be good resources. I've seen a number of contractors build solid relationships with their local vocational school and use that as a feeder for workers coming up. So there's some unique ways to do it. But, you know, the old thing of thinking that people are going to come, especially if you're a smaller residential guy and thinking that people are going to come knocking on your door asking to work for you. That doesn't really happen anymore. You've got to be more proactive and reach out.
Yeah, and a big piece of it is leadership. A lot of people
Sure.
don't want to go work for a company. They want to work for a leader, a manager, somebody that's going to give them a clear path, career path, things like that. So, I joke around. My college roommate used to say, 80% of everything is just showing up. So if you can get somebody that can show up and show them a clear path and give them some guidance, teach them a trade, a skill, you're well on your way to building something. Now, the flip side of that is you got to make sure you have the workflow. So you could be a heck of a motivator, heck of a leader. And if you've got guys coming to work, showing up on time, and you say, hey, push this broom, or I got 2 hours of stuff for you today, then pack it in. That's awesome on a Friday, but if you're consistently doing that through the week, and sure, things can be seasonal, but, figuring out a way to keep guys motivated, even in lieu of weather, especially in our world, if you can figure out things for them to do and keep them motivated, you're going to have strong crews and continue to be able to build a business.
Now, Todd, you mentioned something about generational considerations and generational differences a little bit earlier. Talk to me about the millennial mindset and kind of what they bring to the job market.
Sure. I love millennials, and I think that they fit very well in the construction arena. And one of the reasons is millennials typically like to have a pathway of growth. They don't need hands held, but they like to be told how to do things and trained. They like to have this idea that, okay, if I learn this skill, this will happen. Maybe I'll make more money. Maybe I'll get more responsibility. If I learn this skill, this will happen. And so that challenges the managers of today's companies who typically haven't led that way. It challenges them, but it can really make some tremendous workers if you set up those sort of plans to bring in that millennial mindset
Right.
and advance them through your organization, and it can be very meaningful to them.
Awesome.
Some of the things that we've seen is that, a lot of people feel like they have to go to college to go and be successful. And that's absolutely not the case. I think there's a level of self-starter or motivation that people have to do, but if people are willing to show up to work, learn a skill, whether it's a millennial or a different generation, I think, the pendulum's starting to swing back the other way. They're not feeling pigeonholed into having to go take on student loans and debt, or go to the military. There is opportunity for people that are willing to work.
For sure.
So another thing that I'll often hear about millennials is, I have problems getting them to show up at work on time, or they never show up on Fridays, or they never show up on Mondays. I would challenge us. Maybe we need to rethink that. Maybe work days don't have to start at 7 a.m. I've seen a lot of successful contractors the last couple of years go from 5 8-hour days to 4 10-hour days. And really it makes their crew, their work more efficient, because once you're at the job site, the more hours you can work, the better.
Yep.
And yet gives their new workers a 3-day weekend every weekend. Or gives them overtime if they do choose to work, that 5th day. So I just encourage that, it's a changing culture out there, and one of the things about changing culture is you can't force it to change to meet your old ways. You got to figure out how to change and adapt to the new culture, and I think that's a real plus for contractors out there who have that mindset that maybe I need to do things differently.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great thing in any business. If you're not learning, you're not growing. We talk about that a lot. And adapting as a business, that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we covered a lot about labor and how that translates to your business. And Todd, I really appreciate your perspective. This has been a great conversation. If you have any questions or any additional thoughts, we'd love to hear how you find labor and how you incorporate them into your workplace. Please comment down below. Subscribe here for more on the Metal Roofing channel. As always, I'm Fab Barnett. We'll catch you next time.